What's up, everybody? Welcome to Talkin' Fit's first episode of Coaches Roundtable. We got two awesome coaches on today, Sam Forget and Brian Fitzsimmons. These guys have been around for a while, both in the online and the in-person coaching space. So we're going to answer some really good questions that we have set up for today that we thought would be a very valuable episode to go out to all the listeners. So thanks, guys. Thanks for hopping on.
Absolutely. Pleasure to be
So
here.
I would
Thanks for
love
having
to
me.
just get some quick intros from you. So just two basic questions. Sam, who are you? Where are you from? How long you been coaching?
All right. A little background, originally from Massachusetts, now in New York City. I started coaching people in person about 12 years ago now, and then transitioned everything online around 2016, 2017. Went the hybrid route for a while, and then I've been fully online for, I guess, over 5 years now. What did I answer? I'm trying
Yeah,
to
that,
think.
12. So how old are you?
I am 29. So I started coaching people actually when I was 17. Miraculously, people trusted me to do sessions, and I was, driving around to different areas of my hometown and training people in parks and like building I guess it would be not that I advocate for this, but kind of an under the table personal training business. And then,
Oh, dude, I had that going on for like 5 years too.
oh yeah, okay. And then
Nobody sent
yeah,
us to the IRS.
yeah, I know. And then the second I graduated high school, I did, the certifications, the insurance, all that jazz. But yeah, about 12 years now.
Nice, man. And Brian, what about you? How long you been coaching? Where are you from?
Since 2015. So whatever that ends up being, like what, eight,
Eight,
nine, coming on 9 years.
9 years.
Yeah, and I started out at basically a Curves. So I was always
Nice.
training moms from the get-go, and then went to a gym where it was pretty much all 40 plus moms and dads. And I got to a point where I'm like, I want to do my own thing. So for the last 2 years, been doing my online coaching for moms over 40. Been having a blast.
How did you guys make that switch from in person? Like you said, Sam, you said you did hybrid and then you went fully online. Did you like say, okay, I have to get X number of clients online before I make that switch, or did you just go for it and then you filled up your roster?
So part of the reason why I went hybrid for a while was out of necessity because my business was a traveling service. So I was
Hmm.
driving around to anybody and everybody would hire me, but at a certain point, I can't drive 75 minutes away
Hmm.
for a session. So I'm like, all right, how else might I be able to help this person? And sometimes I would actually still do those 1 hour drives, but since I couldn't do it often, I'd say, all right, we'll do a little bit of in-person work and then I'll figure out this whole online coaching alongside of it. But what really accelerated things is when I left my hometown in Massachusetts and moved to Miami. And I'm like, all right, I got to have my entire client base move online within the next X months. So, of course, that's a little bit of trial by fire. Like, let me get real systems in place and not just send people random stuff and call it online coaching. So, yeah, it was hybrid for a while out of logistical necessity. And then it was literally a location thing where, I wanted to maintain my business and then I get everybody online.
Nice, man. That's awesome. What about you, Brian? How did you make that switch? Was it
Yeah,
because you
so
worked for somebody when you were in person?
yeah, the gym that I worked for mostly for 7 years, that was like where I learned everything. It got to a point like during COVID where I just got fed up, and I realized real quickly that I'm not that great of an employee. I need to be my own boss. Because I'm like, this could be better, this could be better, and just getting pissed off. And I'm like, fuck this, I'm out. So
Yeah.
sorry to get the first F bomb in here, but but yeah, so I left, and I'm like, listen, I got like maybe two people on the roster. I'm gonna drive Uber and Lyft and make this happen. So that paid the bills for a little bit, and then I've just been slowly building ever since.
That's awesome, guys. Yeah, it's always I always love talking shop because I think being in the online space, you kind of just get in your own bubble a bit. That's like the one thing I do miss about working at a big box gym is that like I always call it like the break room chats. Like you'd be in between appointments
Yep.
and like you and the other coaches would be like sitting in the break room having lunch, just like bullshitting and or getting lifts in together. So sometimes I know for me, like we talked before we started recording just about some business stuff. I get caught up in my own bubble and I'm like, I feel like no one can understand like what I'm going through right now. And so it's interesting to hear like your guys' stories. That's really cool. That's really cool. So 9 years and 12 years. I'm coming up on year 10. That's a lot of coaching experience that we have between the three of us. So I know that you guys are going to get some really great answers today. One more question before we get into the questions. How long have you actually been consistent with lifting and like practicing what you preach? Obviously, it's evolved over the years, but like when did you guys get into lifting, just from a personal perspective, not professionally?
Brian, you want to kick this off?
Sure. I started when I was in seventh, eighth grade, and really haven't taken a break. The
And how old are you
longest
now?
stint, I am 31.
31.
So
And I'm also the oldest person on this podcast. What the fuck?
yep. But yeah, the longest stint I ever had was in college. I took 2 months off and I'm like, I feel like garbage. This sucks. I hate the way I feel. I hate the way I look.
Mhm.
And ever since then, it's always been like at least like bare minimum 1, 2 workouts a week. But for the most part, like 3 to 4. And the
Mhm.
evolution has been like most trainers kind of go through this. You go through your powerlifting years when you're like, I'm going to lift as heavy as possible because I'm a real lifter. And then
Yeah.
you go into like the functional space a little bit. You're like, this powerlifting thing hurts. I want to like not hurt anymore. And then you go so far into that that you're like, well, I'm not making any gains. And then you kind of
Yeah.
come back and you kind of find that sweet spot where it's like, all right, I could feel good and lift a shit ton of weight at the same time and have the best of both worlds.
Yeah, absolutely. What about you, Sam?
Started in middle school as well. So I actually got exposed to the weight room in elementary school because my dad was a meathead to say the least.
Yeah.
So just when he'd get home from work, I mean, he'd have, I don't know if you guys know the arm blaster that you kind of hang around your neck and your arms are in
Oh
front
yeah,
of
they
you.
like Arnold.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like I'm talking an arm blaster, the head harness with chains hanging off of it, where you could do like lateral neck extension and flexion. So that was the stuff I was around very young. And I was mostly consistent. That said, when I was younger, I was a big basketball guy. That was my thing. So when I was in season, the consistency would be, a little bit more sporadic. And then post college, actually, Brian nailed it. I went right into powerlifting.
Uh-huh.
I got bored being a 3-trick pony. So then I went into strongman. And then more recently, I've actually started training for men's physique. So I guess the pretty typical progression of a lot of people.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
I missed the
yeah, that's awesome.
bodybuilding years. That's
Yeah.
also part of the progression.
Oh, yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, no, a very similar experience. I started lifting when I was like 12, 13, and I've been consistent with it ever since. The first big chunk of time was just I just wanted to look better. So just like going to the gym, doing bodybuilding style, not really perfecting anything, got into more like heavy lifting in late teens, early 20s. Still preferred the bodybuilding style. But then I got really into powerlifting like mid 20s, competed a few times, did decent, then started my own business. And when I started my own business, I didn't go the functional route. What I found myself doing, which looking back is this is coming up on 6 years ago, I was like, oh, I'm starting my own business now. I got to be like super lean, like everyone on Instagram, and I have to do like these like Instagram style workouts. So I just started doing like all these like hit workouts that I was coming up with my own that were just like CrossFit-y sort of thing. And over like 2 years, like I like lost all my strength and gains, and I was like lean, but like I hated it. I didn't like the way I was performing. And then I spent like a year or two putting muscle back on, and now I'm just like I like fucking bodybuilding and powerlifting. So that's my main chunk of working out, and then I throw in conditioning too because I just there's too much evidence to show how good it is to not do it now. So I do a little conditioning here and there.
I do think, not to jump ahead here, but you make a great point about Instagram workouts almost being a different category than, I guess, for lack of a better label, regular kind of effective workouts. Because
Because they're
especially
not functional, they don't help you get stronger, and they don't help you get more jacked.
but it might make for a good thumbnail or a good
Yeah.
carousel post or get a lot of saves. Like, if I'm personally going to program more, whether it's direct ab workouts or, core exercises for somebody, I'm almost certainly not going to give them 6 exercises to do in a row,
Oh
3
yeah.
sets of 15 to 20 reps with a fire emoji. But if you're posting it on Instagram, it's like, well, if I give somebody a 3-point plank, I can't think of a more boring thing to post on Instagram. So you have the
Yeah.
shit that works, and then the shit that you kind of pack it. And we all have to play the game a little bit. I get that. But yeah, I think that's funny and very relevant that you bring that up, because I don't know if enough people realize how often what they're seeing from people on these gigantic workout accounts, they're sets for Instagram, they're workouts for Instagram. It's not the meat and potatoes of what these people are actually doing.
And that was my mistake, was because like I was actually doing the shit that I was posting, and then I was seeing how it wasn't leading to good results. Because at the time I was all in person, and so I was bouncing around. I was subleasing space at a CrossFit gym. I was doing a corporate wellness gig. So I was like, anytime that I was working out, I was like, okay, I get it like 40 minutes. How can I just get drenched in sweat in 40 minutes? So like it would be like, if I was doing upper body, everything supersetting or giant setting or stuff like that. And then it took me, even at that point, I had been lifting for so long, and I had to like relearn, like, oh, hey, no, the stuff I've been doing for like 15 years is what works. Like, stop doing this bullshit. So yeah, we got to like learn those tough lessons. But for me,
it's like,
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say there's a really good quote from John Goodman on this. It's like same shit, different shirt. That's pretty
Yeah.
much what we're all doing. The people
It's
that get the good results.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And now I'm getting like, honestly, like I feel like the most well-rounded results I've gotten my whole lifting career. And it's just because I'm just doing the basic stuff, just the basic boring stuff. All right, guys. So first question. Two things that you've changed your mind on over the years in regards specifically to nutrition. So, Brian, two things you've
Yes.
changed your mind on in regards to specifically nutrition.
So I was fortunate enough to get exposed to precision nutrition pretty early on. So I never really had any super strong opinions either way. But you eventually fall into hating keto, hating carnivore, hating on everything because you're like, I know the right way.
Mhm.
But at a certain point, like I know my current mentor, Jason Phillips, put it really well. He's like, listen, like nobody's going to listen if you just demonize what the heck they're finding progress with. Like these people that are losing 10, 20 pounds on keto immediately, and you say, this sucks. It's like, you sound
Yeah.
like an asshole. So it's like, even though it might be wrong, there are people that benefit from it and there's lessons to be learned. So, like certain things like going vegan, probably for a lot of people, they can't pull it off the right way and do it in a healthy way, but they're going to eat a crap ton of vegetables. So that's a great foundation right there. Add a little bit of protein and work from there. So it's really more, I guess it's not two specific things, but it's more like a methodology and like a philosophy around nutrition where it's like there's benefits everywhere.
Mhm.
And as long as you're making an effort to do something, you're
Mhm.
going to learn some sort of good habits that can carry over into a more sustainable plan.
Oh no, that's really good. Yeah, I think we all kind of fell into that camp at some point where they're like, no, like all these diets suck. They're so horrible for you. But so for what Brian's saying is basically he's changed his mind on being so dogmatic about like, no, just a right way to do things and all this other stuff is bullshit. Like if you're making an attempt and it's benefiting your life, then that's cool for you. And then eventually, like, people like we learned our lessons with the mistakes we made with our businesses, with training. People just got to like learn those lessons. What about you, Sam? What's something you changed your mind on nutrition wise?
And the first thing that comes to mind is actually something Brian and I spoke about, only 2 weeks ago on his podcast, and that is that sustainable dieting actually exists. And I think early in my career, I so badly did not want to be the strict dieting guy who made people feel bad for being human that I went too far along that spectrum. And it was,
Mm-hmm.
treat yourself, flexibility, balance, all this stuff. And, overwhelmingly, I think those things are good ideas. But if we're looking at dieting, the verb to consciously choose to enter calorie deficit to lose weight, the very nature of that, physiologically speaking, is unsustainable. And like, there's no way around that. You can't possibly sustain that. You would wither away and die. So, like, right away, dieting is not sustainable, nor is it meant to be. And then if you look at a lot of the strategies and tactics that lend themselves to a smooth diet, whether it's fairly meticulously planning your meals, whether it's walking around moderately hungry and not necessarily racing to the cupboards every time, getting your peanut butter on a food scale, everybody's least favorite activity. I would never sit here and expect a client to do any of those things for the rest of their lives. But does that mean that we should run everything through the filter of, well, if I couldn't do it forever, I shouldn't do it now? You're probably going to have a very, very long diet if you don't creep at least a little bit into unsustainable territory.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the key is not to take it too far because then it becomes a ticking time bomb and you rebound. But I think your diet's the noun in terms of the things you should, not should, the things that you do eat on a daily basis. Yeah, mostly sustainable. I'm not saying to go on the grapefruit diet or the Special K diet or any of these things, the watermelon diet. The fact that these things are even real is so sad. But
Yeah.
but dieting itself, I think a lot more people, and to answer your question more directly, something I've changed my tune on quite a bit is that sustainable dieting does not actually exist. Mostly sustainable dieting, cool, that's completely fine. But
Yeah.
I think you can absolutely take that too far to your own detriment.
So I agree with you 100%. I think people need to have sustainable nutrition practices. That's not a sustainable, you're not on a sustainable diet, meaning that you're dieting to lose weight in a sustainable way for the rest of your life. Because the goal is, like, I think Brian said this on your podcast too, is that like if you do it right, you don't have to do it again. So like, yes, there's going to be times like, and this is the point that Sam brought up. This is on Brian's podcast too, is Sam brought up how, well, yeah, it's possible that you may gain some of the weight back and it doesn't mean you're a failure. You will maybe have to lose weight again. But truthfully, if your goal is to lose 50 pounds, if you do it correctly, you should never have to lose 50 pounds again. You may, ebb and flow, cut here and there. So I agree with both of you guys. Like, it's taking that stance of hey, there's no right way to do this, but also understand like, you know, you're gonna have to do some unsustainable shit to find what's sustainable for you. And I've been having that like conversation with clients a lot lately because I fell into that camp as well earlier on in my coaching days, where it's like, no, you should be able to eat the foods you want. Like, you know, you should be able to do that, you know, eat whatever you want each day. And now I find myself just always telling clients, like, you don't need to go to Chili's on a Tuesday. Like, there's really no, and it's like, unless there's an emergency or like, I can't think of a reason that I would go to Chili's today and get a margarita and mozzarella sticks like that. Like, why would that happen? And why are you trying to bend over backwards to fit that into your diet? So I think having that conversation too with like, I think I forget who posted about this recently, but they were saying how like if your first questions when you're starting a diet is, well, how can I fit in A, B, C, D? Then you're going about it the wrong way. You got to ditch some of that shit along the way.
That might have been PJ Street. Maybe
that's what it was. That's what it was. Yes. Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I like the cliche, just because you can doesn't mean you should. So of course, half of our industry likes to post in their bio, I'll show you how to lose weight without giving up the foods you love. And, you know, I talk about this fairly often. I think that's a wonderful sentiment. A lot of people need to hear, because to this day, as much good education as there is surrounding health and fitness, if you pull 100 people off the street and say, hey, how do you lose weight? 99 are going to think they can never eat their favorite foods again. So I like the general idea, but I also think we have to continue that conversation and say, hey, but at the same time, if you're constantly trying to work in a lot of these favorite foods that kind of got you into a gym in the first place, that's like having a limited financial budget and you're still trying to buy expensive watches and shoes. Can we theoretically make it work? Yeah. But is your journey to getting out of debt going to be dramatically harder and tighter than it needs to be? Yeah, absolutely. So to me, it's like two things can be true. Yes, I can show you how to lose weight without giving up the foods you love, but, and then there's the second half to that conversation.
Yeah. So like, there's a difference between elimination and moderation. It's like,
Exactly.
It's that simple, but people are just like, I'm sure you guys have had these conversations where someone's interested in signing up for something and they go, yeah, my hesitation is like, I just can't like not drink wine. And I'm like, all right, well, no one said that. You don't have to give it up. But my question to you is, if that was true, if that was true, are the results that you are claiming that you're like crying yourself to sleep at night that you're not getting, is that not worth a couple glasses of wine that you won't be able to have in the future? And just having that conversation with people, I think that people, a lot of times, they're just holding on to these like comforting behaviors that aren't necessarily bringing them any value or happiness. So if someone told me like, hey, I have a bottle of wine every Friday night with my wife or husband, and it's my favorite night of the week, and we enjoy it. We pick a new one, and you know, we try it and we watch a movie. I'm like, yeah, don't give that up. But if you're drinking the $6 barefoot wine by yourself, watching Netflix for 3 hours, like there's deeper shit going on that we need to work on. You shouldn't just be worried about like not giving that thing up.
Yeah. And I think the missing thing really is the whole honesty component, because it comes off like you can have your cake and eat it too, but it's not quite that. Because as somebody who does use that in their messaging,
Yeah.
okay, I'll be the first to tell you that like it's more about everybody finding the right starting point, and then how you said, Adam, like finding out that those comforts aren't as great as the benefits of when we curve that behavior.
Yeah.
Because if you're working with somebody who is promising that, they better straight up tell you your results aren't going to come as fast, and we're going to have to curb them eventually, because the grass is greener when you start doing the right things and it becomes easier. And even though fat loss isn't easy, it's substantially easier when we're eating more vegetables, when we're getting to bed on time, when we're eating protein and fiber. And that's like the path that I think a lot of people need to embrace, is like, I'm here where I'm at, but I can get to a place that doesn't involve these comforts and be happy.
Yeah. Where do you guys so when you guys are coaching clients, where do you kind of draw that line? And it's a very individual question depending on the client, but just drawing that line between enabling them to do the shitty behavior versus, you know, being supportive of them and helping them work through like some disordered eating patterns. Because I noticed with some clients, they genuinely do have what they call a fear of certain foods. But then I say to them, I'm like, well, if you were afraid of them, you wouldn't be eating them this often. So are you actually afraid of eating out, or are you just trying to come up with a reason for you to not do it? Because, You saying I don't want to diet because then it makes me afraid of eating out, but now you're eating out 5 nights a week. That doesn't make any sense logically. If you were that afraid of it, you wouldn't be doing it all the time. So I guess, do you guys have any like words of wisdom for someone who feels like they know they need to make these changes, but they're kind of afraid to? So where you kind of draw that line between like, hey, you're enabling your poor behavior versus maybe you do need a little bit of hand holding here.
What immediately comes to mind for me is, and to your point, Adam, this definitely varies person to person, but the second there is a meaningful mismatch between the things they're saying they want and the things that they are doing on a highly consistent basis over an extended period of time. Because, of course, we all have moments in a micro window where we're sitting here saying, yeah, I totally want to lose a bunch of fat. But then it's the Friday night pizza night and we kind of go off the rails a little bit.
Yeah.
But when that becomes a little bit more habitual, that's when we go back to the drawing board a little bit and say, hey, I'm not here to be a dictator. I'm not here to tell you, you shouldn't do this. You can't do this. You have to cut that out. We're sitting on the same side of the proverbial table here, but you're telling me you want this. This is theoretically what would have to happen. How can I then support you? How can we team up and look for areas that we can reduce friction between the things that are most in line with your goals? So, to get back to the individualization thing, some clients, whether it's, their muscle mass, their height, their activity levels, et cetera, they can get away with a fair amount of flexibility. Other people got to be a little bit tighter. But in either case, when I do see, again, a consistent mismatch between the things they're saying they want, the things they're doing over an extended period of time, that's when we have to be honest as coaches in a compassionate way. So that's why I always emphasize same side of the table. I'm not here to crucify your food log or, tell you just need more discipline. That's not remotely helpful. It's like, let's team up. Like, what's going on here? And then, of course, the educational side of things comes in.
One question I like to ask people is this blank behavior unreasonable to ask of you? And would it make your life less enjoyable? So, for example, if someone's like, I'm eating out 3 nights a week, and I say, hey, well, listen, like if we cut that down to 1 night a week, would that be unreasonable? And would that make your life less enjoyable? And usually if the answers to both those questions are no, like it's not unreasonable and it wouldn't make my life less enjoyable, I'm like, all right, well, let's try it. Let's see how it goes. It's like, and then if you absolutely hate it and it makes your life miserable, then we can figure out a middle ground. But like right now, you're having 10 drinks a week. I don't think cutting it down to 4 is unreasonable and make your life less enjoyable. So let's just give it a shot. What about you, Brian?
I think it comes down to really managing expectations and honesty, because it's like you just tell them, like, listen, like this is the deal. You told me you want this. To get that, you need to do this, and it's going to come faster or slower based on this behavior. Now, if you want it to come on, if you want to reach your goals faster, then we got to change the game up a little bit. We need to get you to a place where we're going to be able to do that. Now, if you don't want to do that, that's totally fine, but don't have the expectation that it's going to come that fast or come at all, depending on the gravity of it. And then I like Dr. Lisa Lewis put it really well in one of her talks like last year. She's like, some clients really just have to sit in it. Like some of them really just have to experience it and have you there as the guiding light and say, listen, this is why it's happening. You're doing it over and over again. And it's okay. Like, I'm not here to judge you. I'm just letting you know that there are other options. And then you can have that discussion of like, what is the right move forward from here?
No, that's really good, man. I think that's sometimes the burden that we put on ourselves, that we think we have to have like all of the answers and the solutions and the mindset hacks. But sometimes it is just very black and white. Like, this is what you need to do. This is what you're currently doing. What can we do to get you to here? Right? Like, is that unreasonable?
And I think as coaches too, a lot of coaches get burnt out and they just like fire clients because they're like, this person doesn't want it bad enough. But it's like, the best thing people can do sometimes is just to be there, not to be doing anything, just to always be that ear of like, listen, I'm here when you're ready. And if they want to use you like a retainer, like a lawyer, then some of them need to do that.
I have some clients who've been with me for a long time, and sometimes on their check-in, they're just like, yeah, just I don't really need anything from you this week, but just knowing that I can reach out is very helpful. Next question. What are 1 or 2 things that you've changed your mind on from a training perspective?
I personally used to be very, very dogmatic about machine work. And this is a little bit of a throwback because to be fair, I've changed my mind on that, or I changed my mind on that years ago now. But once upon a time, I very much fell into the camp of you should always do free weights because it's more functional and there's more stabilization and this, that, the other. But I've actually more recently incorporated more machine work than I ever have in the past because of the actually because of the decreased stability demand. So the greater force output, not to get all into the weeds here. But I guess the point being, looking at the things that you're trying to achieve, which for me right now is more muscular focused stuff, more so than, not that I don't want to get stronger, but muscularity is the top goal right now. And being open to the tools you're using to achieve those outcomes, like being comfortable with those things ebbing and flowing a little bit over time. And to use a quick nutritional example, once upon a time, I was very bullish on fasting. And at the time, I never thought that would change either. And then you reach a point where I'm like, oh, it's tough to catch up on protein and fiber later in the day. I'm a little too food focused right now. So I do think a trap a lot of people fall into is not acknowledging that, the things that got you here may not get you there in terms of like whatever that next season is, that next goal. So yeah, definitely machine work was something that I used to be a total snob about. And now half of my programming is direct machine work because it fits my goals right now.
It's do you apply that to client programming as well? Like I know you said you recently started doing some client programming. Do you have you changed your mind on that for your own personal goals or also for like clients?
That's a great question. I feel confident in saying that I've never been that coach who would like, this is the way I train, so this is the way you have to train. But on a semi-related note, something I have definitely adjusted with client programming recently, because, and what you're referring to, for anybody listening, for a little bit of context, I did do programming for clients for 8-9 years, and then I niched down to nutrition for 2+ years, and now I just started doing programming again. This time around, I find that I am there's still some variety, but I'm not just throwing it in there for the sake of throwing it in there. So I'm being a lot more honest with clients about, yes, I could give you an eccentric 1.5 single arm dumbbell front squat down to a box for the sake of like giving you something new every 6 weeks. But I certainly don't shy away from telling people, hey, in most cases, you'll benefit far more from sticking to, Brian quoted John Goodman, right? Like same shit, different shirt. So I'd say that's actually something I've changed in client programming, is playing the variety game a little bit less, but then also, of course, educating people on why that is. Like, because everybody is bombarded with like, whether it's muscle confusion, just outdated nonsense like that, whether it's, a selling point of a group X class being the day-to-day or week-to-week variety. I get why people want it. But it's definitely a game that I've played a little bit less. Not that we don't throw in some fun finishers and just random shit for the sake of moving and having fun with it. But that has changed in client programming this time around for sure.
And have you changed, and were you always like with client programming, or even when you were doing, let's say like in best case scenario, you have access to everything or your client has access to everything. Do you do like, is it 50-50 machines? Is it mostly free weights, or do you feel like it's just very case by case?
Very case by case. What I'll actually do when I'm writing a program for a client is I always reverse engineer based on, of course, what are the biggest goals? What are the things you want to get out of these workouts? What are the exercises you absolutely love? Like you'd be stoked to see it in your program. Is there anything that doesn't feel great? Anything that you feel like is tricky to get to in your gym? Anything that you hate? And then, of course, training availability. One caveat I will add to that, though, is whatever somebody tells me for training availability, I dial it down a little bit.
Because, me too.
When people hire us, they're at their most motivated. I'm willing to do anything. And then it's only a matter of time before that fizzles out. So if you tell me, okay, Sam, I'm willing to do 5 days per week for 60 minutes. Okay, great. That's the motivated version of you. I will personally be programming for the least motivated version of you, who's tired, who doesn't want to hear about this shit, which is going to be you most weeks if you have responsibilities like most people do. So if somebody says 5 days a week for an hour, I might give them, an upper lower body split, 4 days per week, 40 minutes a pop, something like that. Maybe a little bit of optional work, but I do always tone it down a little bit. But to answer your question more directly, I basically take what they're interested in and reverse engineer the program based on that. And actually, to speak to the nutritional point again, I will also let them know if, hey, the things that you're after are not totally in line with the things that, or let me rephrase that. The things that you're saying, hey, I want to spend time doing these things. If they're not totally in line with somebody's goals, I will be clear about that as well. Hey, we can give up a little bit of the optimal factor if you think this is more enjoyable and sustainable, because I'd rather have somebody, operating at 70% in terms of what's technically optimal week after week after week after week than have what is technically an optimal program that they only do sporadically. But yeah, that's generally how I approach the programming side of things now.
What about you, Brian? It's something you changed your mind about training wise over the years? And this can apply to you personally or to how you coach clients.
I was thinking about this one a lot, and I'm like, shit, I can only pick two. Like,
All
I
right,
have a
that's good.
notepad right here of like many.
All
that,
right, no, it's given. That's funny. My son, when he was younger, he only knew one, two, and many.
That's
So if
great.
he wanted more than two of something, he'd be like, "No, I want many," and that could mean three, it could mean five, it could
I
mean
like that.
15. That made me laugh when you said that.
All right. Well, if you don't mind, I mean, I'll try to like
Shoot some out
condense it
there.
all.
Yeah, give me
So,
some.
first thing that came to mind was kettlebells because when I first started in that gym that I was at for 7 years, both of the guys that started it up were RKC certified, so they were like heavy on the kettlebells. And me being a meathead bodybuilder at the time, like getting ready for a show, literally as I got hired, like I'm like nobody's gonna build muscle doing this. Like you got to be on the barbell. You got to be doing dumbbells, machine work. Like there's no way that's not stable enough. And we had an in body in there. And I mean, even though the in body's not super duper accurate,
Mhm.
if measurements are moving, it usually means that things are moving.
Something's happening. Yeah.
Yeah. So I see people's muscle mass gradually going up over time. And I'm like, what? Like this makes zero sense. And then I'm like, oh yeah.
So you used to
When you
be
lift
anti
heavier, yeah.
kettlebell, and now you're pro kettlebell.
Oh yeah, I use it when I can. Not many people have access to it online. Like that was like my
Yeah.
biggest like
You
when
know
I
what's
went
funny?
to online.
You know what's funny about that is I like kettlebells for like maybe, and I don't even do these myself, but like if I was doing like a farmer carry or like holding them for lunges or doing a row. Other than that, I fucking hate kettlebells.
Yep.
Like I don't know why, but like anytime I see a kettlebell, I'm just like I still am like young Brian. I'm like, no fucking way. Like,
Yeah.
that's not fucking
No,
doing
but
like I swing it
when
up,
you
it's gonna
master
smack
it,
me in the collarbone. Like I don't fucking want it.
yep. When you master how to work it, like especially in the like
Yeah.
I would love to overhead press if I had access to enough of the like little micro differences, like
Mhm.
5 pounds here and there, but they're all like 5 kg differences. So it's
Yeah.
like you got to jump 10 pounds every time you do it, but nothing feels as good as pressing with a kettlebell. That weight
Really?
displacement behind your hand, it allows your shoulder to roll back where it
Dude,
needs
I
to be
wanna
at the very top.
I'd rather
It's so
just go
nice.
on a machine shoulder press and go to failure like I'm like 18 years old.
Yeah.
It's
I
funny
think
that
go ahead. Sorry.
no, I was just gonna say I was like it's funny because I was just thinking about that recently. Like I was just like uh if I see like a kettlebell goblet squat in a program, like I'm not fucking doing it. Like it's not happening.
Yeah, swapping it for something. Brian, it's funny you mentioned how good the press feels. I've never, and perhaps I just need some coaching on it, but I've never pressed a kettlebell overhead without thinking, holy shit, the back of my wrist
Yeah.
kills. And then
Yeah.
Yeah.
kettlebell people are always like, oh, you just have to build up a tolerance. I'm like, or I could just grab a dumbbell and not have anything pressing.
Or I could just go get fucking
Yeah.
jacked on the machines.
Well, when you watch like the guys that do like kettlebell sport, all of them have the really fat wristbands that like guys
Oh,
wore in the
yeah.
NBA in like the 80s and 90s. But if you're using like the heavy ones, there's no way to avoid it. Like if it's
Yeah.
super heavy, it's gonna freaking hurt. But like when you're working with like the 22s and the 18s, like the key is with a kettlebell, you can't hold it flat like a dumbbell. You got to angle it so it sits in that like corner of your thumb and your pointer
Yeah.
finger. And then that makes it so much easier to control it and it's not pressing down. It's really just kind of sitting there.
So
All right,
I
I'm
need
open
some
to
coaching.
trying. I'm
Yeah.
open to
Yeah.
trying it. I'm open to
Have you
trying it. What
guys
was
used fat bells by any chance?
I
Yeah.
haven't.
Brian, you have?
The fat grips? Yeah.
No,
No, the
fat
fat bells, the ones that look like
They're like
balls,
inverse
basically.
dumbbells. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
It's like the little sphere you reach into. I will say, I mean, those are, quite the investment, not very accessible 99% of the time. But the few times I've used those in terms of dumbbell alternatives, I'm like, this is incredible. Just like pressing in any direction and rowing.
Really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
one of the
yeah.
places when I was on vacation had those, and I was like a kid in a candy shop. I'm like, ooh, I'm gonna give these a try.
What was another one of your many things, Brian?
Next was minimum effective dose, and this one came like straight from Mike Boyle because he's like, listen, we're working with average, normal people. We're not working with athletes. We're not working with like kids that are trying to get on some team. We're working with people that need to live their lives. You can't give somebody a leg day that's going to crush them and they can't sit to take a crap
Mhm.
4 or 5 days out of the week. Like they can't like go office to office, like trying to do their thing and be sore all the time. It just doesn't work. So what's the least we can do and get a lot of benefit from it? And that kind of shaped my entire philosophy around training. And I'm like, that's a really good point because before that, I was doing like the bodybuilder stuff where it's like 20, 30, 40 sets in a workout and you're just crushed. As a 20-year-old, you can handle it, no problem. But 40, 50, 60-year-olds, that is way too much.
That's interesting they said that too, because I've changed that with my own personal programming over the years too, just for time constraints most of the time, honestly. So like I started adopting the whole like doing 1 or 2 actual working sets. And then I've been really educating my clients on the difference between a warm-up set and a working set, essentially just being like, hey, listen, if it's not the failure, it's a warm-up set. So like, so you're going to get that one or two, because even if for the average person, I mean, again, this is like intermediate. Even if you tell them to push to failure, they're still not pushing all the way to failure. So like when I noticed what I was saying, leave 1 or 2 in the tank, they were leaving 4 in the tank. So I just say push to failure, they're probably still leaving 1 or 2 in the tank.
It's a great point.
So I noticed with me too, over the last year or so, just with time constraints, with having a kid and a business, I was just like, all right, I need minimum effective dose. I'm going, a lot of times I'm doing like 1 really hard working set per exercise with a few warm-up sets between, maybe 2. And I've just noticed same deal. Like I felt better. I'm actually able to finish my workouts, and I don't feel like I'm like, I used to go through that, what you're talking about before, like you have this optimal program, but then I wasn't able to stay adherent to it. And so now it's like, all right, well, I'd rather get 1 or 2 hard working sets on this than to have 4 on the program and then be like, oh, I skipped the last 2.
Yeah.
So
and
go ahead.
I was going to say, I think us too, like no matter how long you've been in the game, we take it easy on ourselves sometimes. Cause I think back to like high school days when you had a football coach in your face, like saying another one, like we literally had a line out the door to throw up, and that was failure. But now you're like, whoa, I feel a little dizzy. That's probably about it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. My whole thing too is I remember back in the day when I would do like legs, if I wasn't sore the next day, I would be like annoyed. I'd be like, what the fuck? I thought I worked out hard and I'm not sore. And now when I get sore, I'm like, oh man, maybe I pushed it a little too much yesterday. Like it's just, you just change. So I notice with clients too, I have to re-educate them. Like, listen, soreness isn't something you avoid, but it's also not something you chase. It's something that just kind of happens sometimes. So if you're really sore, okay. But if you're not, it doesn't mean you didn't have a good workout. So really educating clients on how training intensity matters. So that's one thing too with me, is I used to think like, oh, if you lift below 5 reps, you're getting stronger. If you lift above 10 reps, you're training for, endurance. And now I'm just like, listen, I don't care if you do 5 reps or 12 reps. I just care what those last 2 look like, right? Like that's what matters. And I've been coaching clients on that a lot, and people who are coming around to that idea after months and months of being like, stop worrying about what the fucking workout says. Like I've actually started doing this too, is I've been like, it'll say like, incline dumbbell chest press, it'll say like 6 to 12, like just land in that range. And if you get 4, then you went too heavy. So next week, stick with that weight you got for 4 and just keep doing it every single week until you can get 6 or 7 and then bump it up.
Yeah, that's something I've been talking to clients about a lot. And I think you added an important caveat, Adam, an intermediate phase. Because if I have somebody who's a little bit newer, whether it's overcoming gym intimidation or just getting comfortable with movements, 3x10 at a moderate intensity, great. We're building the habit. But once you kind of graduate from that, that stage of training, the thing that I've been really pushing my clients to look out for is duplicate performances in their workout. So basically, if you're hitting 3x10 at 20 pounds, that tells me you had a lot more in the tank on the first and probably the second set. But I think you also make a great point, Adam, in saying that I think a lot of us are so conditioned to say, well, Adam said 3x10 and Brian said I had to do 4x12. So I'm stopping at 12 no matter what. And the set becomes like a completion based thing of 1, 2, 3 till 10 to 12 or whatever it is, rather than executing at a very high level and auditing at the end of the set and asking, if I absolutely had to, gun in my head, how many more reps could I have done? And I think the tricky part here is, yet again, 2 things can be true, especially as you get stronger. Say a Bulgarian split squat, for example. Even if you're warming up on that and you have a few reps left in the tank, it sucks. It's really hard. It's not fun. Nobody wants to do it. But what can also be true is that you had a little bit more, or I'd say in the case of Bulgarian, a lot more in the tank. You just didn't go seek that out. So we've almost been looking at their workout logs of like, okay, well, here, same thing, 3x12, same exact weight. Next week, I want you to pay a little extra close attention to that, see if you have a little bit more. And then to piggyback on both of your points that you made about minimum effective dose, I think something that's often overlooked in programming is the cognitive component of, again, for the most part, when the average person's walking into the gym, they're probably not super fired up to train. It's not their lives. And if you only have 1 to 2 work sets that you got to really dig deep for and give everything to, the net result will actually likely be better than if you see 3 to 4. Sometimes I see 5 by 10 on a leg press. I'm like, if you're pushing close to failure 5 by 10 on a leg press, that alone would cripple you. So I think that when you consider the cognitive element of, okay, what's the average person going to do, ourselves included at times, when you look at a program and say, okay, I have one top end set of a bent over dumbbell row, that's going to be an extremely high quality set that I would argue you get more out of than 3 sets that you're doing at a significantly lower intensity with less effort, if that makes sense.
That makes 100% sense, because I do that with myself. Like, if I know I got to do Bulgarian split squats and I know I got to just do that one hard working set, I'll do it and it'll be good. But if I knew I got to do 3 of those things, like, they're not going to be the same. And it's funny you say Bulgarians, because I did them on Monday, and in my head I'm like, all right, I'm hitting the 90s for 10 each leg today. Like, that's one of my top set. That's what I'm going for. And I remember doing a warm-up set body weight just to like stretch, and I'm like, that fucking sucked. Yeah. Like, but then I still ended up hitting that number for the workout. But if I had in my mind that like I had to do that 3 times, it never would have happened. I would have cut the set short.
Yeah. And so Brian, sorry, real quick, I wanted to, Sam said something really good about like how like we're working on this, like the speed of it and how hard it is and everything like that. And I think another thing people need to learn is learn themselves and their lifting style, because if powerlifting teaches you anything, it's that certain people are like quote unquote grinders, not to be mixed up with the app, but they're grinders that like will go so slow and they will be able to just inch and go. And then there's some people, they just hit a wall and bang, they just hit failure. Like, you got to kind of figure out where you are, because me personally, I am like that grinder type that will be able to push out 3-4 reps that look like they all should be failure. So like the traditional put a rep or 2 in reserve, I'm like, man, I am at that stimulation point, like with 5 or 6 reps in reserve. So you kind of have to feel that out too. And that's one of the downsides of online coaching. You can't really see people performing it and see like, this is generating a lot of fatigue. I don't know if this is going to be beneficial at this point.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And it can also vary not only person to person, but exercise to exercise. I have some exercises where I can grind out reps past what looks like, mechanical failure. And I have other ones, for me, it's always like triceps, like skull crushers, pressing. I just fucking hit the wall and then that's it. Like, it's like, I don't know what it is, but like, if you ever hit like close to failure on like a skull crusher, you're like, oh, that's it. Like, it's like nothing's happening right now.
Yeah, you're 8 reps in, you're like, I'll get at least 15. You're already thinking about, I need to go up and weight. And then the 9th rep, you go, what the okay.
Yeah, and you just can't fucking move it. And it's funny too, because I'll do like, as I get close to this is like just stupid bullshit, but like if I'm doing like a set of 12 and like that's my goal, that top end set, and I get to 8 and I'm like approaching failure, I'll like start counting from 1 again. So like I'll count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then I'll count 1, 2, 3, 4 to get to 12. And mentally it just makes me think, oh, I'm only at 1. It's so weird. But I've done that. I've done that before. And I'm like, so I tell it to my clients, like my in-person clients, I'm like, try that. And then they're like, oh wow, that worked. I got those extra 2 reps.
A little trick. I mean, I have actually a buddy who's in town right now, and he lives in London, but we grew up training together. And it's so funny you bring up this example, because he's the only person I've ever known where if we're doing, say, like some shitty stuff, like a safety bar front squat is an example that comes to mind. We're doing like a set of 9, just something that nobody really wants to do that bad. He'll be like, all right, Sam, 3 triples. And then I get a little lower. He's like, dude, 4 doubles piece. And he like breaks up. I never think, oh, I have 7 fucking reps left on this. Yeah. He's like, Sam, 3 singles to go, 3 singles, and then just a double. I'm like, and then at no point am I mentally digesting it as, oh, I have to do 9 reps of a safety bar front squat. He refuses to let me.
It's funny that you say that, because I'll say that as a joke sometimes to clients, where I'll like say like they're doing pull-ups, I'm like, or we're doing a set of 10. And they give me a look. I'm like, it's just 5 sets of 2. It's just think about it. It's 5 sets of 2. Just think about 5 sets of 2.
I will say, I know we're kind of bullshitting right now. One super quick thing is, I do think that can be a super valuable training cue, not for crazy high rep sets. Again, I know we're just joking around now, but say it's like a set of 4 on a trap bar deadlift. I often find that when I cue people up is like, I truly want you to think about this as 4 singles. Don't think about just like knocking it out, touch and go, get to the next rep. I want you to reasonably take your time with each rep, lock in, and execute as if you only had to do a single rep. If it takes you slightly longer, that's fine. But same thing, I think the net outcome ends up being a lot higher quality. Now, am I saying you have to call a set of 15 singles? No, I think that's ridiculous. But
I know I get your point. But I think if you can take that mentality into your sets and not focus so much on, well, it says 12. If you just focus on, I just had this conversation this morning with a client because she said to me how she's been progressing each week with either adding a rep or adding 5 pounds. And she's like, but my workouts are getting harder and harder every week. And I'm afraid that I'm going to hit a week and not progress. And that was my cue. It was like, oh, I haven't educated you on like, this is not just going to progress forever. I was like, otherwise everyone would just bench 350. Like every person, you know, who's been working out for 10 years, we bench at 350. It just doesn't work. So then I coached it through like, you're going to hit a threshold. And then let's say you're doing dumbbell chest presses and you're doing the 25s for a set of 10, and then you bump it to the 30s. So you can only get 6. Now you're going to stick with the 30s until you can get 30s for 10. And that might take you 8 fucking weeks to do that, but that's fine. And that's still progression. There's going to be some weeks where you get 6, some weeks where you get 6.5, and some weeks where you get 6 again, but it just felt a little better than the last week when you got 6. And that's how and I told her, I was like, this is actually good though, because it means you're getting more advanced, because to assume that I'm still adding 5 pounds to the bar every single week would be crazy. I'd be deadlifting 1,000 pounds by now. Right.
Yeah.
But it doesn't happen.
Strongest man in the world in 24 months. Easily.
Yeah, exactly. So not to skip totally, but I don't want to take up you guys' whole afternoon. I think we covered the next 2 questions were like nutrition mistakes, and training mistakes that we've made. What would be like a very common nutritional hurdle or mistake that you see clients make, or that clients are commonly making before they start coaching? So like something that you're commonly just helping clients overcome when it comes to food.
Brian, you want to take the reins?
Sure. I'll start it with the whole on or off mentality. That kind of just sets a really bad framework for how we look at food and just fitness and nutrition in general, because most people view it as like, I'm on my diet, I'm doing everything right, I'm doing it all. And then one bad week, I'm off the diet. And it's like, no, like how we eat is a dial. It's not an on or off switch. You do your best with what you got. If it's a shit week, dial it down, do your bare minimum. It's like, get protein at every meal and let's like focus on that. And that'll keep you in a decent place. Better than just saying, I'm going to order out for every meal and just not care at all. And then when you are able to give more and you're in a better place, life isn't as stressful, crank it up a notch. And it's like, all right, we're going to add some habits onto that, where it's like, now you're protein and vegetable and we're sticking to your calories at the same time. And when you go at it like that, where it's like you audit yourself, like, what can I handle this week, or what do I have the capacity for? That just puts you in such a better mindset and a better headspace to make the decisions that are best for you.
No, I think that's great. Yeah, like that whole on track, off track mentality is very, very, very common. And it's that mindset, also known as like the all or nothing mindset, right? It's like I'm either all in or I'm totally off. Super, super common. What about you, Sam?
I'd say not preparing for a dieting phase in any way, which again, Brian and I recently spoke about this. I understand it's the least sexy thing in the world, because when people submit that coaching application, they're hoping that any of the 3 of us can get them to lose 10 pounds in the next 3 weeks. And then I sit here and, say, hey, like we're on quite a shaky foundation right now. Prior to adding the stressor to your life, both physiological and psychological, that is a calorie deficit. Perhaps we get you from, your current week that goes from 5,000 steps to 3,000, 8,000. Let's level that out and get the net average up. Right now, protein, sorry if you can hear all the sirens and whatnot behind me. Protein and fiber on every plate. You haven't done that for more than 4 days in a row in 5 years. Perhaps we lay that foundation first. The strength training consistency side of things. Proactively learning effective coping mechanisms for dealing with stress rather than just turning to food or alcohol. Because as a bit of a side tangent, all the tips and tricks in the world surrounding nutrition don't really matter if it's the only way you know how to cope. You're going to default to that every time. And the list goes on. And I won't be too long-winded here because I could be, but this gives us the gist of there are likely several things that make sense to shore up a little bit more prior to saying, and we're also going to cut your calories and put you in a deficit and have you try to manage that when you don't really have any sort of solid foundation in place. To which, again, most people say, yeah, but I want results. I wanted them yesterday. To which I gently push back and say, how has that worked for you in the past? Not once in the history of ever have you prepared for a diet. And it's quite possible, I think, with any of our new clients that they have attempted to diet north of a couple dozen times in their lives.
Yeah, 100%.
if not more. I have absolutely no doubt there are clients in my roster who are saying their 50s, 60s, and even in their 70s who like they started dieting in some capacity in high school or middle school. So you are perhaps 100+ attempts into like trying to diet and kind of get back on the wagon. Not once have you ever laid a good foundation first. So perhaps this time we try something a little bit different and see what happens.
Dude, I mean, I have, and it's our job, so it's like we should be having those conversations often, but like how many times you've had that conversation now to where you're just like, how is this not common knowledge, at least amongst my community? Because when you're explaining this to people, it sounds like it's, I get it. I kind of get it. Like you paid a coach and to lose weight, and then the coach is telling you like, we're not going to go right into weight loss right away. And you're just like, oh my God. And I ask them too, I'm like, what do you think I have to gain by making you get fat? Like,
Yeah.
what do you think I'm like? I don't have an agenda that I'm trying to steer you in the wrong direction. So the way I like to frame it for people is, listen, if you do these things that I'm laying out for you, where we're getting ready for weight loss, you're gonna notice body composition changes, and you're gonna notice that you're heading in that direction. And sometimes what I found is that coaching them through that is a little helpful. Like I had a client recently who, same thing, like on our first call, she laid out her entire stressful life and how she's done this 100 times and it's never worked. And she's not even someone who's like obese or something. She just like, wants to lose maybe 15, 20 pounds and this and that. And then we're like 4 weeks in, she's getting stronger, sleeping better, nutrition's more consistent. She's implementing better stress management techniques. She's more consistent than ever, noticing that she's getting tighter, even going as far as like, question her current position at work and looking for maybe to change companies to make her life less stressful, all this amazing stuff. And she's like, I'm just a little discouraged that the scale hasn't gone down that much. I'm like, Are you fucking kidding me? Like, do you not see all the other stuff we're working on? So I 100% agree with both of you. I think that's very, very true. It's just people don't prepare for a diet, which then also sets them up for being in an all or nothing mindset because they just are reacting off of emotion and stress or like, I got to lose this weight as quickly as possible. Anyway, guys, this was a lot of fun. I could have talked to you guys for like another hour, but real quick before we sign off, Sam, then Brian, just give us, where we can find you on social media. If listeners liked what you guys had to say and want more info from you, where can they find you?
Hopefully. Yeah. My Instagram is at Coach Sam Forget. My last name is spelled like forget, but it's pronounced Forget. And then my website is the home base for everything. So my podcast, which is currently in between seasons, my newsletter, all the free stuff, tons of free nutrition guides, and that's just samforget.com.
What about you, Brian?
Yeah, so I'm pretty much across all social media as Coach_Fitz, Fitz with 2 Z's, FITZZ, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all over. And then my home base is my Facebook group, the Fit 40 Family. And yeah, that's also in Facebook too.
Nice. Awesome, guys. Well, I really appreciated this. This was a lot of fun. I had a good time. Hope you guys did as well. And I'll talk to you guys soon.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much.